A very blessed good night to one and all. It's 6 o'clock in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, and welcome to another very special edition of Conversation Corner brought to you by the National Transformation Initiative. As many of you will know, or if this is your first time, Conversation Corner is every month, one on Instagram, and at the end of the month on Zoom, where we essentially communicate with you. We speak on various topics, whether it be time management, dealing with issues, and then also we get to show you some of the many opportunities that we have, especially for you at the National Transformation Initiative. We also have a chance for you to share what you think about NTI, some of the challenges you may be facing, but also to what you may be interested in future conversation corners. If this is your first time joining Conversation Corner, please put a one in the chat if this is your first time. I know Benel is here, so she will monitor the chat for me. Alex is here as well. Big up yourself, Alex Jordan. Always ready, always available. And tonight we have a special guest, so stay tuned for that. So Simone says first time, Theolo first time, Shanna Mitchell first time, Jamal first time. Lots of first timers this month. This is absolutely brilliant. I'm happy to welcome each and every one of you here. So, since there's so many first timers, Conversation Corner is a monthly feature brought to you by NTI. As you know, we have our nti.org.bb platform, and then we also have different training opportunities. We go into the community and we basically engage with you and talk to you about transformation and the many opportunities that we have. The next question I have for you: how did you find out? How did you find out about the Conversation Corner? Did you get an email? Did you see it on socials? How did you find out? Did our special guest invite you? How did you find out? Feel free. You can turn your mic on as well if you want to let us know how you would have found out about uh the Conversation Corner, about NTI, and what are your thoughts? Okay, email. Most persons are saying email. This is absolutely lovely. I'm happy to hear that, happy to see that. And have you done a course? Share your course, what you have done. If there's any courses you would have engaged in, if any courses you would have done, please share a course that you would have done, how you're enjoying it. So while we do that, I will introduce my very special team with me tonight from the NTI, and I will go through an order who I see. Alex Jordan is our NTI archivist. Alex, are you here? Shout out the crowd a little bit, Alex. I don't know if you're driving right now, perhaps. I don't know.
No, I'm here. I'm
But
here. Hi, guys. How you doing? Happy Conversation Corner to you all.
yes, Alex hosts our Instagram one at the beginning of the month. So tune into that one. That is the second Monday of the month. And Conversation Corner Zoom edition is the final Thursday of each month. So you know you have the Instagram audience and you have the Zoom audience. So Instagram is more relaxed conversation. Well, on Zoom is more the formal training element. And then we also have Miss
Right.
Marquisha Aline. Marquisha Aline, who is a jack of all trades this morning. I had the privilege to go and see the program that she does with the Barbados Youth Advanced Corps, the Project AI. She could tell you a bit more about that a little later down as well. Marquisha, welcome. I don't know if you can turn your mic on and shout out the
I
crew.
hear.
Yes, AJ.
Yeah, I wanted to say something though. It was the reason I came on
Go
here.
right ahead.
This
Go
is
right
in
ahead. Go right
Conversation
ahead.
Corner. I was thinking, well, basically, I believe so much in the foundation of this citizenship course being the first thing, like course zero that everybody needs to take. And the idea of citizenship. Obviously, Barbados a buzz right now as we prepare to host the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. And it occurs to me that a lot of people, let's say under 40, don't really have cricket in their blood, don't really rate it as a sport, they're not connected to it in any way. I feel that is our national sport, but it's almost beyond national sport. So baseball is America's national sport, but baseball does not need to mean as much to America as cricket needs to mean to us, in my thinking. Because it first of all, it bonds us as a region. And that is just the first principle from the very founding fathers. We're trying to be a strong, solid CARICOM. But then secondly, it really gives us a sense of identity. When we were great, we were the best in the world at this sport, at a time when we really shouldn't have been. So that even being grounded in that sense of identity and pride, I just feel like we need to make cricket more relevant to youngsters. It has to be pushed. I know people think, cricket gets all the money, but cricket is who we are too, beyond the boundary. That's all. Sorry, ranting. I just really wanted to talk about it.
Thank you, AJ. Yes, and AJ, you mentioned the citizenship course. We'll show you that a bit later down, where citizenship is for all of you. The Prime Minister wants each and every Barbadian to do the citizenship course. Who else is on the call? We also have Mr. Adrian Green. Everyone knows Adrian. He's an NTA archivist and really keeps us in check as it relates to our projects, our outreaches, our skill development stuff, our training that we do. We also have Winnell Griffith, who's the lead of the Outreach and Skills Development Hub. So those are the NTI members that are on. I know many of them will join as the hour goes along. But it's not about us tonight. We have a featured guest who will be speaking about managing anxiety. He is a counselor. He's a psychologist. He is a professional who works in different spheres. He's a cricket fan too, AJ, and I know he's looking forward for the Cricket World Cup. He's a past student of the Combermere School. Any Combermere persons in the chat, please put it in the chat up and on. I didn't go to Combermere, but I know many of you may have gone to Combermere. They got the School on the Hill Foundation. That's the best for the Christchurch University, best school in Barbados. But, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our featured guest for tonight, Mr. Krisnan Hurdle. Please put your virtual hands together for Mr. Krisnan Hurdle, who will be speaking to us and giving us a brief presentation on managing anxiety, and then also you'll have some time for question and answer at the end. So please feel free to engage and hear all of what Krisnan is sharing about. And I just want to welcome special guest tonight, my good friend, Mr. Chef Adrian Komobach, a good man, a very good man. Happy to see you tonight, bro. A good man indeed. So Krisnan, over to you, sir.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's good to be here. I am actually based now in the island of Montserrat, and I am a counselor here, a clinical counselor here. I'm a counselor therapist. So I have gone afield, I've taken the advice of NTI, and I have decided to spread my wings and offer my services in the Caribbean. Actually, that's one of my dreams, to be a global citizen. So thanks to the work that NTA is doing in terms of encouraging others of you who are looking to branch out, not only offering your services in Barbados, but also offering your services and skills throughout the Caribbean. So thanks for having me, NTA, thanks for having me and inviting me to here. And let's get going. I know this is a subject that people are very interested in, anxiety. So without further ado, let me share my screen. And just give me some feedback if you can see it.
Yes, we can see Krisnan. Thank you.
Excellent.
Go right ahead.
Brilliant. So this evening we're looking at anxiety. And anxiety is something that we all face from time to time. We all face some level of anxiety, whether it is making presentations, whether it is when we are in overwhelming situations, whether we're late for work. Perhaps there's something going on in our lives that we've had some traumatizing situation, some traumatic situation. And we all face anxiety from time to time, different levels. But yes, there are different levels to it. And we're going to talk about that here this evening. So what is anxiety? I'm very interactive, so I'm going to ask that question, and I just want maybe about 2 or 3 responses to hear what the word is on the street. What do you think anxiety is? You can quickly unmute and share your opinion.
Yeah, you can also drop your comments in the chat. Krisnan, I'll monitor the chat for you.
Okay.
And you can share your answers in the chat, but also feel free to turn your mic on and go right ahead. Tanya, same feeling of overwhelmed, frustrated, Krisnan. Tanya in the chat.
Good. That sounds very good. Thank you, Tanya. One more? 2 more. Give me 2 more. Overwhelmed, frustration.
Marcia Clark is saying fear.
Mm-hmm.
Nikita Squires is saying nervousness and worry. Tia
Nervousness.
is saying an irrational fear. Simone is saying an uneasy feeling, extreme nervousness. Tanya is saying panic, intense fear. Brittany is saying intense fear. So lots of comments in the chat, Chris. Now, whoa, you're getting some good engagement. Guys, I'm so happy to see this big crowd tonight.
Excellent, excellent. So, and most of them seem to be on point. So they're all aspects or manifestations of anxiety. So, anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, uneasiness. You also have feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes. My question for you is, do you think anxiety is an emotion, a mood, or a psychological state? Do you think it's an emotion? Is it a mood or a psychological or physiological state? What say you? Let's hear some feedback on that.
I would say it's all three, right? It's dysregulation of the nervous system, but it can be, well, I'm sure it can be triggered by many things, mental, emotional, chemical.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yes. So it is all three. An emotion. Sometimes you can have emotion to a temporary response to a situation you're currently in, and that is a sign of anxiety. Like, for example, you may have as I do sometimes when I have some big presentations, it can tend to be a little nervous. That could be one. Sometimes it's enduring. Sometimes it lasts more than a couple minutes. Sometimes it lasts a day. Sometimes it can last a few days. That can also be a form of anxiety. And a psychological state, which not just involves the emotions and the mind, but then it can also involve the body and the body's responses, physiological responses. So yes, it is all three. It's an emotion. It can be an emotion. It can be when you have to drop the news to that special someone, perhaps you're ready to get down on your knees, and you're ready to drop that news, or you're about to go on stage. It can be a mood, can be enduring, or it could be a psychological state. So yes, anxiety is all of the above.
Chris, now you're getting some good comments in the chat as well. Psychological state, all three. Some persons are saying all of the above. So you're getting some good. And Tanya drops a very good comment because they are all psychological responses, physiological responses.
Good, wonderful. So anxiety can affect a person's ability to work, study, and participate in daily activities. And when we get into it shortly, we'll explain that where it moves from just an anxious feeling, or what people loosely call anxiety, to what you see on the next line, an anxiety disorder, is that it becomes debilitating. It is debilitating, affects your ability to function in everyday life, and it can be consistent. It can be consistent and enduring. So it affects your ability to function. So it interferes with your functioning, interferes with your ability to think, to reason, and to physiologically perform and do tasks. All right. Anxiety disorders, it would become a disorder when it has been assessed. These can be distressing and debilitating. They contribute to a loss of educational and employment opportunities and difficulties in family and social relationships. All right. And as I said, to some extent, we all face some level of anxiety. But when it becomes, when it reaches certain thresholds, when it becomes debilitating, and when it becomes consistent and enduring, that's when we consider it as a disorder. If it happens one-off, or it doesn't happen very often, or is not very intense, it may not be considered a disorder. But that's where assessment comes in. All right. Symptoms or signs of anxiety. You have fast or regular or very noticeable heartbeat. So your heart starts beating real fast. Feeling lightheaded and dizzy. Some people feel that. Headaches, chest pains, loss of appetite, sweating, breathlessness, feeling hot, shaking. All right. So these are some of the physical signs where it affects your physiological functioning. And then I've also worked with persons who have to do performance on the field. So it affects your ability to speak clearly, affects your ability to maneuver, to use your body. Then it can also affect people sexually. So it can affect sexual performance, and it can affect other physiological some other physiological functioning. All right. So it's not just those things that are very obvious. People are perhaps more familiar with things like phobias and panic attacks, but they can affect things like your performance on an everyday level. Physical symptoms, so they're the mental symptoms or signs: feeling tense, feeling nervous. You're feeling like you're unable to relax, worrying about the past, worrying about how the situation is going to turn out. Feeling tearful, feeling as though you want to cry, you're not going to get it done. You don't know how you're going to get it done. Not being able to sleep affects sleep patterns, difficulty concentrating, fear that your worst is going to happen, intrusive or traumatic memories. So this is remembering things that have happened and sometimes projecting, or as I said earlier, worrying, projecting it on the past. But intrusive traumatic memories, this is where you've experienced severe, serious, overwhelming situations that cause these reactions, and obsessive thoughts. You can't stop yourself. You just find yourself thinking about these thoughts over and over again. So these are some of the mental, emotional symptoms. And then changes in behavior, not being able to enjoy your leisure time, not being able to enjoy the things that you used to do, difficulty looking after yourself, struggling to form or maintain relationships, being worried about trying new things, avoiding places and situations that trigger or create the anxiety, compulsive behavior such as constantly checking things, all right? And let me say at this point, when it comes to assessing or determining that someone has anxiety disorder, isn't something that you should perhaps try to assess on your own. It is best to speak to a professional, because they understand the criteria and they're able to assess you, because assessment helps with treatment. If you have a good assessment or diagnosis of what the problem is, then you are on your way to a treatment that will be more appropriate for you. Okay? Types of anxiety. And again, there was a slide I wanted to include, but I didn't include it here. When we look at types of anxiety, we realize that these things should be assessed to determine whether it's something you have. This is simply for educational purposes. This is not, I'm not speaking, you should not diagnose yourself. All right. Generalized anxiety disorder, or this should be types of anxiety disorders. Social anxiety. Generalized anxiety disorders, generally speaking, in summary, this is where someone just tends to be anxious or feeling those combinations of symptoms in many different situations. It's as though anxiety goes with them wherever they are. Whatever they're doing, they tend to feel, especially whenever they have to perform, whether it's at work, whether it's in front of people, but there's a feeling of worry and a feeling of anxiousness that is pervading and prevailing. Generalized anxiety disorder. Social anxiety, we're speaking of where people struggle to function in social situations, in crowds. They struggle to function in classrooms, in teams, even in the workplace. It can sometimes be noticeable, right? So the social anxiety is about interacting with other people in groups. Panic disorders, which looks at things like panic attacks and anxiety attacks. Specific phobias. So these are situation-specific responses to situations we're in. Anxiety responses that come specifically in situations we're in. So phobias of needles, phobias of the doctor. These are intense and sometimes irrational fears of specific situations. Even though you know you don't need to be worried, anxiety still comes up in these specific situations, and it's almost predictable that it will happen in that situation once the triggers or the stimuli, once they're around, you tend to get those anxiety reactions. Post-traumatic stress disorder, most people is widely bound to the wrong PTSD, but there are criteria for it, and some of those includes First of all, situation that caused it, being in a very overwhelming, distressful situation. And because of that situation, after the traumatic event, you have a stress response when situations or stimuli reminding you of that situation comes up. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and many times they're intrusive thought, intrusive memories. Again, many of those physiological, mental, and behavioral, especially physiological and mental responses, post-traumatic stress disorder. Let me slow down. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Many people say, I'm OCD, right? And OCD, what is that about? Obsessive compulsive disorder, you're looking at persons who find or feel as though they can't control certain impulses, certain behaviors, and these behaviors tend, again, to follow them around. Once they're perhaps, we know people talk about things not being in line. They need everything to be fixed or clean. These are different types of obsessive. You're obsessed, you can't help it. Compulsive, once that thought or feeling comes on, you have to do something about it. And it is an anxiety disorder that you feel you have to act on it. And body focused repetitive behaviors. Some people, like me, I used to have nail biting, and some people could, for example, they find themselves repeating certain words over and over again, or they're doing certain things, certain movements of the body focused repetitive behaviors. So these are some of the types of anxiety disorders. And again, to be diagnosed as a disorder is something that there are criteria, and it's best to speak to a qualified counselor or psychologist so that you can have an accurate diagnosis or assessment, which will inform your treatment and your treatment plan. All right. Causes of anxiety: trauma, an overwhelming or distressing situation that leaves a mark on you. All right. An overwhelming, distressing situation that leaves a mark on you. Many times we are familiar with the term fight, flight, or freeze. So with trauma, the situation is so overwhelming or distressing that we find that we become in the situation somewhat crippled. And that is where the memory of the situation is stored physiologically and neurologically in the brain, but it's also stored in the body. All right. So a traumatic, overwhelming, distressing situation that is stored in the body. Fear. Fears of what other people will say about you. Fears of criticism. Fears of being hurt, being injured. Many times these are related to previous situations that have happened in the past. So yes, fear is one of those causes of anxiety. Grief. Grief can also cause anxiety. And I am also very, I like to say that grief is not only loss of a person, a death, but grief can also be loss of opportunity, loss of something that you hold dear or you thought dear to you, loss of opportunity, loss of a pet, loss of money, loss of a home. When you lose, loss of a relationship. And when you encounter this overwhelming situation where you're detached from that thing that you held as important to you, you can have difficulty sleeping, you can have these anxiety responses because there's some level of distress. How will I survive without them, without it? And we experience some levels of grief, panic, because we're thinking of what will my future be like without this thing or a person. So some questions have come in. Let me hear. Share some questions for me, Tahir.
Krisnan, you're getting some amazing engagement in the chat. This is the biggest conversation corner we have had in probably over a year. So big up everyone who has come on, but we're getting lots of questions in the chat. Teddy Leon, Krisnan, would you say anxiety is abnormal? Do you want to answer these questions at the end, Krisnan, or do you want to jump in? I don't know. You want to?
I can answer maybe one or two no. Then I'll finish a couple of slides. We'll get back to some of them. So go ahead.
Okay, cheers. So says, Krisnan, would you say anxiety is abnormal? And he also had a follow-up question: should persons be overly concerned about experiencing anxiety?
All right. So anxiety is a normal response, is a normal physiological or neural physiological emotional response or psychological response. It involves the thoughts, as we said, involves the thoughts, it involves the emotions, it involves the body, the physiology. It is a response to the body, the autonomic nervous system, which is where we have responses or automatic responses to situations we encounter. Our body is trying to protect itself from the overwhelm of the situation, from the fear, from the trauma, from the grief, from being exposed too much, or from re-experiencing the situation. So in order to limit the exposure, or sometimes as a response of the exposure of the situation, then our body decides on its own to have a reaction. Many times we can't anticipate, we don't know what it will be. A situation happens and we just react. We have this reaction, this psychological, emotional reaction. So it is normal. But what makes it, again, as I said earlier, what makes it abnormal is because we lose control. We can't control it, and it affects our ability to function in everyday activities at work, socially with friends, with family, in our relationships. It can sometimes cause sabotaging behaviors. If, for example, it affects our ability to speak, it affects our ability to physically perform, if it affects our ability to think and reason, it affects our memory. These things affect our functioning. So to that extent, it is normal on one hand because it's a normal response of the body. The abnormality is that it stops us from being able to do the things that we'd like to be able to do on an everyday basis. One more question for you, from you.
So it's similar questions from three different persons. Nikki Square, she says, where in Barbados can a person go to be assessed? And also what tools, I know you're going to get to that shortly, how to manage anxiety. Tia asked that about the where can you get assessed in Barbados, and then the tools. So I know you're getting into the tools, so you can answer the first part. And they said any local online support services or group. So this is where you need to be. They were getting a good transition. And Jason has a big question, but we'll get to that after the next presentation, after the next few slides.
Okay, so in terms of assessment, there is a psychology department at the psychiatric hospital. Before you even go into you usually have to book an appointment. But if it is very severe, you tend to be seen by a nurse in the waiting area at the front desk. But there's the psychiatric hospital, there's a psychology department, right? And from doing my internship there, from working there, I found that most people think that only mad people go to the psychiatric hospital, only people who are psychotic. This is not the case. I've seen very, very normal people who you would not even suspect that they have a problem getting counseling and getting treatment at the psychiatric hospital, right? So there are a number of psychologists there, but generally you can get assessments done by clinical psychologists. These tend to have more training in terms of assessment, but you can also probably get assessment done by counseling psychologists. Some of them are also trained in assessment. So clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, and even in some cases, psychiatrists would be able to assess for any mental health disorder or anxiety disorder. Right, so moving on, and so specifically, you can check the directory. I am currently overseas. I'm not in Barbados at the time for the time being. But you can check directory. You can check online. You can Google and see what clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists may be in Barbados, and you can give them a call, and set up a consultation with them. All right. Overwhelming situations. So he's talking about causes of anxiety. We talked about trauma being distressing, overwhelming situations, which we have there. Lack of sleep. Lack of sleep can cause anxiety because when your body isn't functioning, especially for a prolonged period of time, you can begin to have physiological responses, the body beginning to break down. And specifically, lack of sleep can also be diagnosed as a type of, there are a whole category of disorders, sleep disorders, but sleep can result in anxiety, anxious feelings. Not sleeping well and not eating well can result in anxious feelings, all right? Substance use, so there's substance-induced anxiety, and other mental health disorders, they can also produce symptoms of anxiety. And as I said earlier, let's go back a few slides. As I said earlier, these are some, for those who have just arrived, these are some of the signs, the physical signs: heartbeat, dizziness, headaches, chest pains, loss of appetite, sweating, breathlessness, feeling hot, shaking, not being able to perform, body not being able to perform, body tensing up, and also sexually, it can have effects on our sexual performance, and otherwise, where you trying to do something and your arms climbing up and tightening up, you're not being able to speak and articulate or enunciate properly. These are all different signs, physical signs of anxiety. Mental symptoms, again, feeling tense, nervous, unable to relax, feeling worried about the past or the future, feeling tearful, again, not being able to sleep, having difficulty concentrating, and also memory, not being able to remember things, fear of the worst happening, and obsessive thoughts. Okay, and then changes in behavior, not being able to enjoy your leisure time, difficulty looking after yourself, struggling to form or maintain relationships, being worried about trying new things, avoiding places and situations that create anxiety. So you in a situation that you notice that this type of situation always triggers or creates anxiety, you're looking to avoid those types of situations or stimuli. It could be the dark, it could be certain places, locations. People have PTSD or panic attacks because of being in car accidents. These are things that can also happen. So they're avoiding those situations. Going to the sea, again, if you've lost a loved one, you don't want to be in the same room, perhaps where they passed away or where they would frequent. These are all situations where you're avoiding those situations that you may be avoiding because they remind you of the situation that the distressing situation you were in. Compulsive behavior, such as constantly checking things. And as I am aware of my behavior, sometimes speaking too quickly, but also sometimes it's because there's a lot of content to share. But something I do, I tend to, Tahir knows this, I tend to say a lot. I don't know, I don't think I've been doing it so much in this presentation, but when I have to speak, I tend to say a lot because so many thoughts going through your mind, all right? And so that is it. Good. How to help? Let's look at learning about anxiety. There are many sources. So this is how to help yourself if you figure that you may have a diagnosis, you may have been diagnosed or assessed, and you know that you've been told that you have an anxiety disorder, or you have another mental health disorder that triggers or produces the feelings of anxiety. Learning about your condition, learning about your disorder or your condition is a good place to start. So trying to get information about it, how it works, why you are triggered when these situations happen. This is and what you can do when you are triggered. This is a very, very useful thing because as therapists, as counselors, we want to provide you with skills so that you can help yourself. And so that you're not dependent on us. You learn how to adapt, how to cope in situations because you're educated, you're informed, right? And counseling. So kind of go down. Getting counseling might be very good, very useful because you yourself, you may not have all the tools you need. So getting help from a trained professional and they can guide you in different exercises, activities, and approaches that you can use to cope better, to return to a level of normalcy, to be able to function in your everyday activities. Monitoring you, because part of it is monitoring, helping you to monitor yourself, and then we incorporate your family and your primary support systems, your friends, helping to monitor you so that things don't get out of hand, but also monitoring yourself. These are part of the therapeutic process. Going to counseling or going to therapy, we want to help you to cope. We want to help you to adjust. We want to give you strategies. And where possible, we want to help you to reduce or diminish the extent of the anxiety response, whether it is, as we say here, mindfulness, being aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing, and when situations happen so that you can regulate. As I say, oftentimes you cannot regulate what you don't recognize. So mindfulness is about being aware, being mindful, noticing, recognizing when these thoughts, these emotions, and physiological feelings and sensations come up, and the actions that you may be doing so that you can correct them or regulate them. Then there are various relaxation techniques that can be used. Relaxation techniques might include same breathing techniques. They may include visualization. They might include progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation is about going through, scanning your body from head to toe or from toe to head and noticing where you're feeling certain tension in your body. And over time, session by session or attempt by attempt, you are seeking to relax yourself and increase the relaxation as you go through the exercise. So progressive muscle relaxation, we are scanning the body, we are breathing and physically attempting to release the tension in the different parts of the body, the different areas of the body, the limbs, the muscles, the shoulders, the back, even in the face, the jaws, the legs, the toes, so that we learn how to relax, we learn how to release the tension. That's a type of relaxation exercise, progressive muscle relaxation. There are a number of others, but that is one of the popular ones. Breathing techniques, deep breathing. There are different types of deep breathing. You've probably heard of square breathing, 7, 4, 7, 8 breathing, box breathing, deep breathing. These are ways that you can help to settle the body, settle the nervous system, so that you can relax the tension when it occurs. And these are things that are most helpful by practicing them over time. And then cognitive therapy, which focuses on thoughts and emotions. Cognitive therapy, thoughts, cognition, and behavioral therapy looks at how you are, what actions you're doing, how to change certain responses. Tahir, you have a question for me?
Hi, my Krisnan. Everyone is enjoying your session. They're certainly benefiting from it. Theolo says, and I think this may be a good time. Perhaps we can do an exercise, Krisnan. One of those breathing exercises. Can you give examples of the breathing techniques that can work to help with anxiety? And then other persons are saying they do a lot of breathing work to help them manage better at school and stuff like that. So we'll get to the other questions a little later, but they said about the breathing techniques about let me just go back to the question. Can you give examples of the breathing techniques that one can use to work to help with anxiety?
All right. So one technique that I find works fairly well with my clients is a type of deep breathing, right? I don't have a name for it. Actually, it was a modification of one of the longer, one of those 4-7-8 or box breathing techniques. Basically, you take a deep inhale, perhaps maybe on the count of 4. Inhale for a count of 4. So we're going to do it now. I'm going to show you. Take a deep breath. Before I do it, I want to let you know there are 4 parts to breathe in. The first part is the inhale. The second part is the space between the inhale and the exhale. And then there's the exhale. And then there's the space between the exhale and the next inhale. So we are looking at those 4 parts of the breathing process. All right. So on the count of 4, you inhale, or you don't necessarily need to do it on the count of 4, but I'll just do it a slow, deep inhale. I hold for a count of 4, 2, 3, 4, and I exhale slowly. While exhaling, I incorporate relaxing the body on the exhale. So I exhale slowly out through the mouth And as I exhale slowly through the mouth, I let my body, wherever I feel anxiety, I try to let those parts relax and release. And then you may hold, you can try out holding after that, holding for maybe a count of 4 after, or you can do a few normal or regular breaths, and then do the next long, and then repeat the process. So in this process, let me repeat it. You're taking a slow, long inhale through the nose. You're pausing for a count of 4, holding the breath, and then you're slowly exhaling. And as you exhale through the mouth, you are relaxing any parts of the body where you feel tension. Some types of breathing, like box breathing, where you're holding for 4 or for a certain count on each of those 4 parts of the breathing process. You might inhale for 4 seconds, exhale, pause for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then pause for another 4 seconds. There are different methods, but I want you to try just slowing down the breathing. That definitely helps some people, all right? Breathing is always a good way to relax the nervous system. You want to realize that anxiety affects us on all levels. So we have the nervous system, the spine, the brain, the spine, which then expands throughout the physical body, the muscles and the organs. And we want to relax it so that we are moving from, so there's a nervous system, and then there's the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic part of the nervous system are those functions that happen automatically without thinking about it. So when we are tense, when we are anxious, we move from this state of balance and what we call homeostasis balance, and we move into a state of tension, or what we refer to as fight or flight, where we are out of balance and we're out of whack, we're imbalance. So we want to do these physical and mental exercises to help to reset the physical nervous system and the autonomic nervous system to bring it into a state of balance, where your breathing is more regulated, is more smooth, and is deep but not distressing. Deep and calm, not distressing. So that's breathing. As we've talked about progressive muscle relaxation, I mentioned going from head to toe, paying attention to what each muscle feels. You can look at certain areas, and you can incorporate breathing with that. Incorporate breathing with when you feel tension in certain areas, breathe the tension out. And then furthermore to that, you can also incorporate visualization. So imagine a wonderful, tranquil, or positive experience where you feel good. Perhaps laughing, perhaps is relaxing, very therapeutic, being at the beach, on vacation, someplace that is very therapeutic for you. You imagine yourself there, visualizing it, seeing it in your mind's eye. When you're imagining it, once you can imagine it, your body begins to feel or respond as though it is in the situation. So we incorporating the physical, the breathing, and the visualizing, the imagination. Another question from you, Tahir?
Yes. MI says breathing exercises like what was just mentioned, self-talk and grounding, music and ice helps her. That's her strategies to deal with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
We also have MI again. I try to remove whatever on myself and whatever is causing me to feel stressed, anxious, and focus on deep breaths in and holding.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Leon, and you can possibly answer this now. Would you recommend clinical hypnotherapy for persons who struggle to regulate their anxiety?
All right. Yes, I know Teddy knows me, and yes, I am a clinical hypnotherapist. This is one of the things I do. One of the things about hypnotherapy that people don't understand is that we all experience the state of hypnosis. So hypnosis is simply imagining being in a situation that you're not currently in. And you respond as so. Visualization is part of that. You're visualizing or imagining an experience that you're not currently in. And if you can imagine, actually, let me pause here. We do it when we are in a state of trauma and panic. when we are re-experiencing a trauma or re-experiencing a negative, overwhelming situation, as the rain comes here, the rain starts here, we are in a quote unquote hypnotized state. We are imagining something that even may not even be happening. So on the contrary, if we can imagine ourselves in the situation of being relaxed, our body responds as though we're in that situation. So we are taking all our senses, all 5 senses, into that situation, and we are kind of trying to block out, because we are fully focused on the experience, we are blocking out the situations currently around us, and it allows us to mentally focus, change our state mentally, what we're focusing on, change our state emotionally, how we are feeling, and what we're doing. We can have greater control over it. So yes, hypnotherapy is a technique, and I am a hypnotherapist, a clinical hypnotherapist. That is one of the techniques that I use for treatment of different types of anxiety. On that note, I do work a lot with phobias, specific phobias. I work a lot with phobias, work with driving phobias, work with fears of doctors, needles, fear of heights, fear of certain insects, and also with trauma. These things can take some time, but I find with phobias, they are easier to resolve than many other types of anxiety. Because once we understand what is triggering it, what is at the bottom of it, we can work to replace, or as we say, reverse or blow out the cause, the trigger. If we can get to the root, two things, the first situation that caused the anxiety, or we can understand the situation that triggers it, then we are better able to respond, to begin to help the person to reprocess how they respond to those triggers and those stimuli, right? So we want to understand what triggers it, and if possible, we want to go to the root, what initially started it. That applies to phobias, that can apply to panic attacks, that can also apply to trauma. And then we also have things like social anxiety, and those types, and those can take longer, but there are things that we can learn how to, as I said, manage. We can learn how to get under control, and in some cases, we can learn how to reverse them with continual progress and continual process therapy. I have some other strategies. You want me to get back to the presentation?
Sure, but we have lots of questions coming in as conversation corner. I perhaps think some of these questions may address some of what you're going to present on as well. So I leave it to you, and I know we're running close to 7 o'clock, but I know we can go over 7 o'clock tonight a little bit because the conversation is really flowing well. So do you want to take the questions, or do you want to finish your presentation? Totally up to you.
Let me look at this next slide, and then I'll take some more questions.
Okay, cheers. Because we have many questions coming into the chat, so go right ahead.
All right, so we're looking at how to manage anxiety. Again, as said before, for those who are new, we don't want to diagnose ourselves. I mentioned about some of the various anxiety disorders, including things that are very popular, the cliches, things like I am OCD and I got PTSD and I got, maybe some people say they have phobias. The other things like social anxiety, their body focus. Let me take it back there. But the point I'm making here is, even though there are different types of anxiety disorders which must be diagnosed, because there are specific criteria for being diagnosed with having a disorder. Some of the criteria include the intensity of the anxiety, the level of distress or loss of function, the duration, the consistency. How consistent is it? How reliable is this reaction? Right? So time, intensity, and the effect and consistency or reliability of the response in certain types of situations determines what disorder the person has. Generalized anxiety, where worry and feelings of anxiousness tends to, as you say, follow the person. They feel worried and they feel tense oftentimes. And generalized anxiety disorder, as I mentioned earlier, can come from using certain substances. It can come from having other underlying mental health disorders, right? Social anxiety is about anxiety when you're in crowds, feeling very uncomfortable, very uneasy. Sometimes persons can get panic attacks. Sometimes they can feel very tired and very uncomfortable being around groups or in crowds and speaking. Panic disorders, having panic attacks, or as we say, anxiety attacks. Specific phobias, which are closely linked and connected to specific phobias, closely linked to panic disorders. But this is where reliably, once certain stimuli happens, you have a certain anxiety response to that stimuli, like clockwork, and it tends to be very intense, and it also tends to be irrational. You know you shouldn't, you know you're trying hard not to, but once that happens, like fear of lizards, the lizard ain't gonna bite you, the lizard ain't gonna harm you. But once you see that lizard, you have a specific phobia, is an anxiety reaction to a specific situation. Post-traumatic stress disorder, having been in a traumatic, overwhelming, distressing situation, it leaves a mark on you, and you have certain reactions to or certain responses to that type of situation. And obsessive compulsive disorders, feeling the need to, I have to react in a certain way, and body focused repetitive behaviors. All right. So these are some of the types of anxiety disorders. And going back here, ways to help. I mentioned earlier, learning about your anxiety, getting counseling, then practicing things like mindfulness, relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, getting cognitive therapy, which is about the thoughts, negative thought patterns, reversing those negative intrusive thoughts. Is about thoughts, how you're thinking, how you perceive the world and perceive situations. That's cognitive therapy. Behavioral therapy, how you behave in certain situations. We want to change the behaviors that we do. We want to learn how to relax. We want to change what we do, whether it's the speaking, whether it is how the body tenses up, whether it is the inability to perform sexually. We want to change what the body does. So cognitive and behavioral therapy does. The combination of that is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So then we're looking at things like exercise. Exercise helps to release trapped energy, and it also helps to loosen up. It can help to loosen up the muscles. All right. Exercise has proven to be very, very effective for some people. And I should also say a combination of these approaches can be very helpful. So you don't just want to stick on one. You can use a combination of them. Learning to be assertive. I usually say that the counteract, the opposition to anxiety is confidence and assertiveness. If you can, one, laugh at your anxiety, and if you can learn how to be more confident and assertive, you are on the way to, in the process, on the journey to managing or reversing the anxiety. But usually managing the anxiety. Let me focus on management and coping. Building self-esteem. Sometimes we are intimidated by people or by situations, and when we start to understand and believe in ourselves more, we feel more confident, we feel more competent, and we feel more we have more self-efficacy. We feel more capable of dealing or handling situations. So learning to be more assertive and building self-esteem. Now, part of therapy is also joining support groups. And this is support groups of persons who are not just complaining and talking about the anxiety all the time, but who are seeking to conquer and who are going to be sharing resources, sending links to different resources online. But you also want to make sure that you're not overwhelmed. Sometimes in these groups, WhatsApp groups, you can tend to have too much information. So yes, join a support group. Yes, you want to join an educational group, which might be an extension of your counselors or your therapist services. But you also want to be wary of information overload and being overwhelmed. Try something, try a few things for a period of time, see how it works for you, if there's any improvement, and determine if it is working for you, whether you want to move on to something else. All right. And then sometimes when we speak about, sometimes anxiety can be caused by things we eat. It can be caused by substances we use. So we want to look at dietary adjustments. And where we find that the anxiety is too overwhelming and very, very hard to control, we want to definitely too severe and acute, we want to consider medication, right? Where a situation is impeding your ability to function to an extent where you're having panic attacks. You might want to go to your doctor, speak to the doctor or the psychiatrist, who is a doctor who looks at mental health disorders. GPs or psychiatrists can give prescriptions. So you want to, on having a conversation with the GP, you want to consider, especially when the situation becomes very severe, very intense, very acute, you want to consider medication, because sometimes therapy and counseling can take a while to work and to adjust. Sometimes relaxation techniques don't help in the immediate situation. You might have a particular presentation or a particular situation that causes extreme anxiety and anxiety reactions. And in that case, you want to consider using medication, which would be considered as pharmacotherapy, right? So you want to consider medication as a part of your treatment process. All right. Any questions from you, Tahir? Let me also caution that, as I said before, certain disorders or certain situations will not be reversed or, as some people like to say, cured immediately. And you want to trust the process, trust your therapist, and respect the process. And so you want to give therapy or counseling due process. Some people, they go to a therapist, they go to a psychologist, and they don't get resolved in the first session or 2 sessions, and they want to dash off and go to somebody else. Trust the process and build a relationship which involves honesty with your therapist. Sometimes there are situations, I've had situations where clients were not totally honest. They were leaving out certain information. Maybe they're using drugs. Maybe there are people in their lives that are, maybe they have underlying griefs. Maybe they have underlying mental health disorders or medical conditions. They're not sharing them. So you want to be honest with your therapist or with your counselor. Questions, Tahir?
We have many questions, lots of conversation in the chat. This is Conversation Corner, brought to you by the National Transformation Initiative. Go onto our platform, nti.org.bb, see all of the opportunities that we have. So Jason Hines, he says, I curious as to how one would go about diagnosing a disorder that one only seems to manifest in private situations, such as cohabitating or spending a long time with a person, specifically something like a form of OCD. Related to that, how does one encourage another person, like oblivious to the potential anxiety, to submit self for a diagnosis and potentially treatment?
All right. So many times when people have symptoms that tend to manifest, not publicly, but privately, maybe in the bedroom, or maybe in certain conditions like around certain loved ones, but in intimate situations or close quarters, they think, well, I can function. This is not affecting me out there in the open publicly. So they tend to avoid or delay going for help, going for treatment. And that can, one, cause the issue or the disorder to get worse over time. It can become more intense, more severe over time. You want to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. Secondly, also realize it may affect the relationship. If something is affecting you don't want to be in a relationship and there's something that you know is there, you both see it, or perhaps the person may be avoiding that is happening, and they are denying it's happening and they're avoiding going for therapy. You don't want something affecting the relationship and you're not dealing with it. So think of the other partner, be empathetic. Also think of how it's affecting you yourself. And two of the major issues with getting help is one, disclosing private information, and two, being vulnerable to deal with perhaps the fear or the trauma, which may be at the root of the anxiety. People are afraid of exposing, people are afraid of bringing up fear or traumatic situations. But as long as it's affecting your functioning, as long as it's affecting your relating, as long as it's affecting your relationship, you want to get help. You want to encourage them. You want to encourage them. You don't want to nag them because you really don't want to be nagging them. But you want to encourage them, nudge them. Perhaps you can, don't insult them, don't criticize them, but you want to show them how it will be better, how the relationship could be better if they got help. You want to show them how their life can be better, how they could be more progressive if they considered getting help for the situation, right? So being critical, being nagging doesn't help. And you want to avoid laughing at a person. If possible, you can also send them links or contact information for a possible therapist or psychologist so that they can make choices for themselves. Sometimes they may not want to let you know that they're getting help. So you can send them links or numbers and they can reach out for help on their own privately. These are some of the options I suggest.
Thank you, Krisnan. And Gwenelle, my colleague, she says, what is the long-term effect on the body if the individual remains in a state of anxiety for an overly excessive period of time?
Very, very good question, Gwenelle. It can so anxiety is a stressor. Stress causes anxiety. Anxiety is a stressor on the nervous system, on all parts on the body. People have digestive issues. People have the autonomic nervous system, which looks technical terms. The autonomic nervous system affects your immune system, your digestive system, your heartbeat, the circulation of blood. It affects your sexual reproductive system, right? Once your autonomic nervous system is affected, you will tend to have over time tend to have other medical problems. You can have autoimmune disorders can develop. You can get the cold or get sicknesses more quickly. Have difficulty sleeping, develop sleep disorders. You can begin to develop, as I mentioned, digestive issues. You can have sexual issues, and then it can also affect the heart, right? Respiratory, breathing, and the blood flow. So we want to make sure that we deal with these issues as soon as possible because they will put prolonged stress on the nervous system, on the autonomic nervous system, on our organs, on all our organs. And the sooner we can deal with stress and stressors, because the anxiety creates a cycle. And we have it, and then it creates fear, and that fear creates a response, and that response creates more thoughts of the fear, which creates a cycle, which keeps the cycle going. So we want to intervene in the cycle by addressing it, whether it's at the emotional level, at the thought level, or the physiological level. As I said earlier, medication will be a good way to manage acute and intense reactions. But then you want to learn how to deal with the issues if possible, deal with the initial stress, traumatic situation, and deal with how you respond to certain triggers.
Thank you for that, Krisnan. And Trudy Harris, she says, love that advice. You cannot regulate what you cannot recognize. But that is key. Natasha Downey, she says, is there a major difference between anxiety and panic attacks, or is it a correlation?
So as I mentioned, panic disorders, which could involve phobias, specific phobias. Anxiety attacks, or what some people speak about as panic attacks. These are types of anxiety disorders, right? And so there is within the broad category of anxiety. Now, as I said earlier in the presentation, you might feel a little uncomfortable, a little uneasy. You might have worrying thoughts when you go up to make a presentation. You might feel nervous. But then having a panic attack where you're hyperventilating, you can't breathe properly. You can't think, you're forgetting things. I remember one year in secondary school, I was focusing on one exam in the morning. And when I got into the evening exam, I could not remember a thing. And in this subject, interestingly, I came first in the first term, I came first in the second term, and I came last in the third term because I totally blacked out. This has never happened to me before. So it can affect our memory, it can affect our functioning, it can stop us from thinking, it can, in these types of situations, it will affect all our functions, thoughts, emotions, and our physical functioning.
Michelle Walton, just some joy. She says when she sees a lizard, she becomes like a mob boss and she wants to kill all of them. We do not condone killing. And Jason responds and says, what do lizards do that could be helpful? So just some jokes there. And then also, persons are asking if you have online services since you're in Montserrat. Obviously, most of our crowd is from Barbados. I just also want to welcome Reverend Beverly Knight. She's a big supporter of the NTI, a good friend of the NTI, a very, very good person. And they're asking if you do online services, Krisnan?
Yes, I do virtual sessions for for all anxiety disorders. I do sessions via Zoom, and I am in the process of setting up my my automated website and process system. But at this point in time, I can be connected via my email address, insightconsultingbb@gmail.com. You can reach me there and we can begin the process of the therapeutic process.
Krisnan, what I'll ask you to do also just share your information, your email, your website, if you want to share a number as well in the chat so persons can know where to contact you. Persons are asking for a part 2 next month. They're saying they want this one to be on managing stress this time, and they're asking for you to come back, and also not just to come back next month, but Jason Hines is saying during the pandemic, anxiety seemed prevalent. I was even digitized. Did it make you a millionaire who retired to Montserrat? He says, I'm not sure about that. On a serious note, are there extra things that the pandemic may have taught us about anxiety, or were there potentially some lasting adverse fallouts? Come back, Krisnan. We have anxiety here. Plead. That's what Jason Hines is saying.
All right. So yes, there is a lot of angst, a lot of nervousness created as a result of the pandemic. People being afraid of catching it. The whole change of life conditions, working from home, people being afraid of financial challenges, worried for their future, for their businesses, for their livelihood. Jobs, some people got severed from their jobs, etc. And we're still suffering the fallout from the COVID pandemic. So we know that there are lingering effects. Some people might have even developed, it's possible, anxiety symptoms and even possible anxiety disorders as a result of conditions leading out of the pandemic. Yes, we want to learn how to manage, because managing is the first thing. How do I deal with the situation that comes up in the deal with the situation in the moment? And if possible, manage and cope. If possible, can I reverse the situation? 3 things we want to look at. We want to look at your thoughts, how your thoughts and perspectives, thoughts and beliefs trigger and how they stimulate, initialize the anxiety. And then how emotions come into play, noticing how you feel, how to calm the emotions, and then how to relax the body, the physiology. As blood pressure goes up and heart rates go up, we get difficulty sleeping, we get tension in the body, we get tension in the muscles. We want to address the thoughts, we want to address the emotions, and we want to address the physiological part of it. Again, in some cases, it's not a go-to for me, but in some cases where it's very acute, you want to definitely consider medication to manage acute and very, very distressing physiological reactions. But then you want to learn how to cope, how to adjust, and how to control those thoughts. So, Jason, thanks for the question. And we definitely want to look at other situations. Like how do we manage our life? How do we create other opportunities for ourselves? How do we learn how to manage stress and stressors generally? These are things that we look at in the process of therapy.
Yes, thank you as well,
And
Marcy.
also how to avoid triggers and stressors like people, how to avoid certain triggers and people and situations, who tend to trigger us.
Yeah, indeed. I looking forward to that session for sure. How to, especially to do with the people, how we can deal with people. People are still coming into the Zoom. I know it's getting late. We don't really want to keep you too long after Marcia Clark is saying agreed thoughts and beliefs have a lot to do with anxiety. Let's get him back to address stress and stressors next month. So Teddy Leon, you have lots of support. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. Krisnan, any other questions before I do our quick walkthrough? Actually, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough now, and you can feel free to put your questions in the chat. This is nti.org.bb. We have free online courses. We have courses in the mental health area as well. I'm just going to show you a quick run through of our platform. Krisnan, can you see the platform? Can you see the page?
Yes, I can.
Okay, lovely. So this is it. When you come on your phone, you can use your tablet, nti.org.bb. You type that into the Google space there, and then you come in, you see, well, what we have offered, our midweek mindset, our conversation corner, some of our partnerships that we have. This is our newly revamped website as well, our outreach projects. We do many outreaches into the communities and stuff like that. We have our Press Forward campaign running now, and then also some testimonials from learners who would have benefited from our program. You also have our newsletter, which comes out weekly on various topics, various opportunities that you have. And then we have 8 NTI courses, local courses made for Barbadians by Barbadians, especially for you. And then we also have a Coursera partnership, which gives you access to thousands of free courses from universities all over the world. And then you can also see some of our partners. So what you will do to log in is you will come here and click register here, sign up for free. You would put in your name, your first name, your last name, your email address, and your password. And then once you sign up, you click submit and you go straight through. And thereafter, once you sign up, you come in and you will be able to then thereafter log in once you naturally have signed up before. This topic tonight is managing anxiety, and we do have some courses in being able to how to develop your growth mindset, how to deal with some challenges, how to deal with situations. And once you come in, this is what you will see. You will see the many opportunities that we have. As I said, we have 8 courses. Citizenship, as Alex Jordan would have mentioned in the beginning, the citizenship is our flagship course. What you will do is click view all NTI courses, which are the 8 local courses made by Barbadians for Barbadians. And those 8 courses are personal financial management, citizenship, core skills, introduction to coding with Java, occupational health and safety, beginner's sign language, and beginner's sign language. So we have many options, especially for you, ready for you to take on. We also have an entrepreneurship course and online safety essentials. So all you will do is essentially click enroll now and go straight in. But tonight, what we will be focusing on is the Coursera options that we have specially for you also. You can come here and see what we have, and then you will click view all Coursera courses. And for example, you may be looking for something in marketing, you may be looking for something in social media, and they have many options especially for you. So what we would have done we would have capped these courses into different hubs so that you can benefit from it. So agriculture, building and construction, changing or advancing your career, how to grow your business, the creative academy, the health and wellness academy. Let's see what there is in the health and wellness academy. So as we said, this can be done on your own time, at your own pace. It is fully online. It can be done from your phone, your tablet, your laptop, in the library, wherever you may be, and they are all for free. So for example, we have a course here called Addiction Treatment for Clinical Skills for Healthcare Providers, Anatomy. Let's see if there's anything on anxiety or managing stress. Let's see. What you can do is come in here and click a keyword that you may be interested in, and then click Apply Filter. Let's see if there's anything on anxiety. No data found. Let's see if there's anything on stress, managing stress. There may not be something specific to the word that you are looking for, but you can look for something like conflict resolution, perhaps. Let's see if that is something that they have. So there may not be the specific word that you are looking for, but you can type in, say, conflict, developing interpersonal skills, the intercultural communications and conflict resolution, which is an integral part of it, mediation and conflict resolution. So as we see, there may not be something specific to managing anxiety or stress, but there are other things that go with it. For instance, conflict resolution. Krisnan spoke a bit on conflict resolution. So there's that option. And then what you can do is you come and you click it. You click enroll now. And thereafter you click view course. And you go straight in and you can click enroll now in very, very, very short order. And there are many, many opportunities, especially for you. And as I said, they are for free. You click join the program and you go straight into the course. And it is easy as 1, 2, 3. So they have the recommendation as the level. We have beginner, intermediate, and then we also have the time schedule that is there for you, but you can finish it in your own time at your own pace, as I said. So that is it for the NTI platform, the Course Zero options, the local options as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I know we've kept you a bit over time. I'm just going to check the chat one final time to see. Beverly Knight is saying she just completed a course. She got her certificate. Thank you. Thank you, Beverly. We look forward to engaging you. Krisnan, just read the chat, man. They're so in awe at your presentation. They want you to come back next month. Is this your commitment to come back next month? Do we have a commitment from you? You're muted, I think. You're muted, Krisnan.
Tire, anxiety, stress, and trauma are my specialties. So I would definitely be looking forward to speaking on any of those subjects and working with anyone on those subjects.
Lovely. So next month,
we are agreeing for next month.
Next month,
good.
The final Thursday of the month. Let me just check the date one time. So put it in your schedules right now. We did a session on time management. So our facilitator then she said to create a schedule. So let's see. June is next month, right, Krisnan?
Yep.
June 27th, 6 o'clock. Be here. Managing stress with Krisnan, hurdle, counselor, psychologist, therapist. Yes, Krisnan, just share your contact information in the chat. Teddy Leon is asking, did Krisnan ever consider developing a course for the NTI? That is a conversation that we can have with our director. Unfortunately, she could not be here. She's traveling. She's on leave right now. And she usually joins every month. Everyone is saying thanks for the great session. Very insightful. Some people get diagnosed too late in life. Would be able to get a copy of this excellent presentation. Yes, I will work with the team to share on our YouTube page. But now, if you are still here, if you can just share the YouTube and the social medias with us in the chat, if possible. Markeisha, if you're here as well, if you can just copy and paste the social media so everyone can follow us or go on our platform. Just share the YouTube link as well for persons. Pauline saying she came in late. Pauline is a regular to Conversation Corner. Thanks again and good night. Yes. everyone has benefited from it. Krisnan, this has been the biggest conversation corner for quite a while. The last few months, we have had probably like 20 people, and we were getting a little sad. Where are the people? Do we need to shift it up a bit? Do we need to make some changes? We have Krisnan's contact there. Krisnan, final words from you, bro.
Right? Anxiety is something we all experience. However, when it becomes too intense, too severe, and it affects our ability to function, it can be ongoing, extended situation, or it can be very acute in specific situation. That's when it becomes a disorder, when it affects our daily functioning. You want to go to a therapist, a psychologist, clinical psychologist, or counseling psychologist to have an assessment done to identify specifically what the disorder might be or what the cause of the anxiety might be. You might find that it might be related to some other mental health or medical condition you have. Otherwise, we want to get to the root of it, the initial situation that caused it. We also want to identify what are the triggers that bring it up, that stimulate it. Once we understand those things, we can begin the process of treatment. And this is something you can learn to manage. This is something where you can learn to cope. And it's possible because I've worked with many people with panic attacks, with specific phobias, and with in some cases of trauma. They can actually reverse them. So you can learn how to manage and in some cases reverse your anxiety disorder. And I'm looking to speak further with you, and we're necessary work with you.
Thank you, Krisnan. And some persons are asking for your presentation specifically. So just email Krisnan, and if you can, if you're willing to, you can share it at the Zoom. Just contact Krisnan. He shared his contact. I'll just share it one final time with you, Krisnan Hurdle. I'll just copy and paste it and put it back in the chat. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Krisnan. Join us again next month, June 27th. We also have Maybe Mindset every Wednesday on Hot 95.3. We have Conversation Corner on Instagram where we feature different guests. That's more relaxed conversation, just sharing the journey and talking about transformation with other persons. That date will be June 10th. So join us then. And we also do some other outreaches and training in between. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. My name is Tahir Bulbulia, and for the final time tonight, good night and God bless.